We want to be free. We want to do what we want to do. We want to have a good time. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a good time.
Good evening, viewers and listeners, and welcome to a very special Halloween episode of Bygone Bros. And as you noticed, we are both here in the same meet space. We are, in fact, not virtual today. That is a huge breakthrough for us.
Yep.
I'm your co-host, Kyle White, joined here by my brother, Trevor White.
Hello.
And our simulated spooky camp fireplace, which lasts for about 45 minutes, so we'll see how much mileage we can get out of this. But today we will be diving into the supernatural, the paranormal, and I guess some of the scarier elements of Halloween, shall we say.
Absolutely.
So Trevor, what would you say is sort of the paranormal, the supernatural? Are those one and the same? Are there differences between the two?
Well, I think that in many practical contexts they're identical, but I think that paranormal to me can encompass something a bit more maybe otherworldly, and I think the supernatural, I mean, I think it really is what you make of it. I think some of them have a more of a mystical or spiritual quality, and then others are more just like, can this guy bend a spoon or not?
Right. Yeah, I hate to admit it, and maybe the more linguistically inclined out there can correct me, but I feel like I use paranormal and supernatural pretty interchangeably. I really am struggling to think of an instance where I would only use one rather than the other. Now, there's a lot of things that fit into those categories. You know, and we'll dive into a couple of these this evening. But you have your aliens, UFOs, those kinds of things. You have your cryptozoology, cryptids, your Bigfoot, your Loch Ness monster, things of that nature. You have, of course, ghosts and zombies and things from beyond the grave. Good old-fashioned monsters, which are not the same as cryptids, because remember, cryptids are meant to be something that you could potentially go out and find.
Critical distinction. Yep.
Which is not necessarily like Frankenstein. He's a monster. Frankenstein's, well, you could argue Dr. Frankenstein's also a monster.
He inherited the family name.
Yeah, let's be real. But Frankenstein's monster, he is a monster. He is not a cryptid. You're not going to find Frankenstein's monster wandering around the woods, at least in theory. So that is an important distinction. But there's a lot of different things that fall into those categories of paranormal / supernatural. Which one would you like to begin our discussion with this evening?
Oh, I mean, in terms of just like a subcategory?
Yeah, let's say, let's go between aliens and ghosts. Those are two easy ones.
I mean, it's Halloween. Let's maybe start off with ghosts.
Okay, ghosts, very good. Well, let's start with the definition. What is a ghost?
I think it's a restless spirit. I think that it encompasses, it's an umbrella term. You've got your poltergeists, you've got your negative energies, as some people would have it, that have no real tangible connection to any particular visual person or appearance. But yeah, no, it is a spirit that ought not to be where it is, or is stuck to its environment in some way. I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not necessarily just humans. There are ghosts that people say are sometimes animals. It's usually a life form. I have heard certain stories of ghost vehicles or ghost things that are sort of given life that aren't necessarily that start inanimate and become animate.
And on that note, spirits in general. This is where it might get into the more metaphysical, and we're kind of getting off on a different track. But I think just popped in my head about objects. One example in Japanese culture, they have the idea of objects that can become animate if they, I think, just exist for long enough, like 100 years or something, like an umbrella or a door or something that can become imbued with a spirit. And that's just in the West, at least, we have the idea of the thing in the sheet or the chains or whatever. But really, that's all contextual. That's all a matter of preconception.
Yeah. Do you know where that started? The whole kind of the sheet and the eyes kind of cut out of it?
If I had to guess, I would say that it was like burial shrouds.
Oh, okay.
Again, somebody with ghostology degree or somebody the real Dan Aykroyds among us, I'm sure can chime in on that. My understanding is that it was a play on a burial shroud or something that a person would be covered in, and that
Right.
understandably is still creepy. Like, that's the thing, is it's all a matter of presentation. Like, ghosts are interesting where you have a very kid-friendly look that we've all decided upon them, which is this white thing, Casper or something like that with the eyes. But like, if you just saw like a person like that out of context, it would be incredibly unsettling.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's, frankly, if done correctly, a person wearing a simple costume of sort of the sheet, with the eyes and thing can actually look kind of spooky if it's someone walking down the street in the middle of the night. So, it's effective at being disturbing, under the right context. So that's kind of, something I see also with kind of the classic image of kind of like a sort of like an old time, almost like Victorian woman or something, wearing like a flowing kind of white gown. That's like a common thing when people talk about seeing ghosts. They'll talk about like the woman wearing like a long flowing sort of nightgown. So that almost feels like maybe connected in some way to that as well. This sort of shroud or kind of flowing garment that's being worn. To tie in a little bit to the theme of this program, which is, Bygone Bros and comparing sort of retro and old things to how things are modern day. Let's rewind a little bit back to, let's say for us, I guess it would be kind of 90s childhood, maybe into early 2000s. Were there any sort of notable ghost stories or things about ghosts, people that you knew or experiences you recall of that period in time as to your impression, I guess, of ghosts or experiences with ghosts?
Sure. Well, I guess just to kind of get this right out there, I don't recall growing up really having anything where I felt like I had seen a ghost. I would have times where it was late at night and I wear glasses, so like if it's in the night, everything looks blurry if I wake up and see something, and it could just be my mom coming downstairs trying to not wake us when we're having a sleepover or something. So anything of that sort. But I would say the stories, I'm a horror guy, and when I was younger, my entry point to that was a lot of, these books probably still exist, but they were more common back when, people read more books. These books are like, oh, this collection of spooky stories. But the packaging, the presentation was like, oh, these are actual, folk tales or whatever. Like, I mean, there's Goosebumps, but then there's also ones where they're your scary stories to tell the talk we touched on that on, I think, on our Halloween episode a little while back, so I won't focus on that too much, but there were others. And I think one of them was called The Thing at the Foot of the Bed. And it was a real hodgepodge of stories where some of them were a little more fanciful and some of them were just like random lists of like like things to do or not do to see a ghost. Like you could look. One weird one was like something like if you like look through a dog's ears, you can see a ghost. Like I can't imagine.
That's like a folk one.
Yeah, like it was like old wives' tales and like little myths and stories. It was a real hodgepodge of stuff. And I have a whole little shelf. I wish I'd thought to bring some for today, but I have a whole little bookshelf at home, our folks' place, and there's like a whole specific section that I've carved out over the years of like little ghost books, like kid-friendly ghost books. It was a whole subgenre back in the day, and
well, I think on a previous episode, actually, we got into some things like Goosebumps, scary stories to tell in the dark. We might have even brought up The Thing at the Foot of the Bed. The picture on that always freaked me out. Like the idea of like something hiding at the foot of your bed while you're sleeping. You feel very like vulnerable when you're in bed.
I mean, a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street, all that stuff, like the bed, sleep. That's if nothing's sacred if something can get you there.
Yeah. Well, I think this is sort of getting a little bit into the realm of witches, and maybe there's some ghost elements to it. But I remember, was it the Bell Witch?
The Bell
was
Witch?
a famous witch story. And one of the things that always stuck with me about that story was there were accounts of people like when they were in bed, like seeing her like fingers come up at the end of the bed and like grab the bed sheets and like pull the bed sheets off of the bed while they were like in the middle of the night. And that always.
There
like,
was
really
another one that I
disturbing.
had, and it was like every state, and it was like a ghost story from every state or something. And there were other ones that would just be compilations of these stories, and they're like, we changed the names and whatever. But I was captivated by the idea of those, and I was captivated like a lot of my preconceptions of like what could be possible. I don't think I ever like tested anything in there as a kid, but my ideas, like my ideas of like what it meant for a ghost to potentially exist, or like signs that a person might look for from a young age sort of came from those. I mean, it never really like scared me. I didn't lose sleep over them, but I was more sort of like the wonder of it sort of captivated me. And I think that to this day, a lot of times people that believe in ghosts, no matter what their faith or whatever it might be, to a lot of people it is just this like kind of, it's almost like horoscopes, where it's like, well, it's a fun little thing that could be that sort of helps me make sense of the world in a way.
Yeah, I try not to ever rule anything out. I mean, I guess I'll just get right ahead on the sort of the conclusion of this subtopic, which is that like I really doubt there are ghosts out there. Sorry to disappoint you all, but like I don't really think it's highly likely. I'm at the same time intrigued by it, and it's interesting to hear theories to try to explain. You know, a lot of the sightings do kind of boil down to, you know, leaky pipes or old buildings or somebody breathing in mold spores and they start hallucinating or something. But there are the occasional story where, you know, I listen to certain kind of spooky podcasts where somebody will share a story, and it's like, if these people are telling the truth, I legitimately cannot explain what they experienced, and those are the ones that do like kind of make a chill go down your spine.
Yeah, and I feel not to get too, you know, metaphorical or poetic about it, but I feel like people can kind of haunt a place. Like if we know that a person or persons died somewhere in a very disturbing or tragic way, or a person has a kind of legacy that they cast over a certain property. Like when we went to the Winchester Mansions, we did that when we were kids. I mean, that's
was a ghost experience.
When I go there, it's like I don't believe in ghosts, but like it is an unsettling place. And I mean, I'm assuming everybody knows what the deal with the Winchester Mansion is, but basically it was the widow of the dude at Winchester Rifle Company, and supposedly she was fearful that the victims of the people who were killed by her husband's guns would get her, essentially. So she saw a medium or something, and supposedly this person told her that if she just kept building this house, that the ghost wouldn't be able to get her. And I'm sure I'm missing some details, but basically...
Well, she was like sleeping in different rooms.
But the property is very real. Like whatever her reasons for building it, or whatever her... I don't know if she had like... how many contractors are working on this thing, but it's like a cancerous property just spread across this estate, and there's stairways that go nowhere. There's doors that open onto pits. She was obsessed with number 13. It's a bizarre, just from an architectural perspective, it's a bizarre piece of property.
Yeah.
I think when you walk into a place that has this history, like even if it isn't literally this thing that's coming to get you, or that you see in a photo, like you feel something there. And I think that humans, like, whatever that is, whatever we started calling it, like this didn't come from nowhere. And maybe it's physical, maybe it's metaphorical.
Yeah.
but it has a power.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if, you know, definitely Winchester Mystery House was a place I remember going as a kid and like hearing the stories about it being haunted. I'm trying to think if there were any other places.
Because we've been on some road trips. I don't think our folks would have really wanted to go to too many spooky places, but I was reading those books, and I was like, hey, we're going down to so-and-so, let's check out this kind of spooky place on the way. But,
yeah, because like as adults, we've been to places like
graveyards, notable graveyards.
Well, graveyards, of course, but like the Queen Mary boat. Was that in Los Angeles? There was was it Menger Hotel in Texas? That was supposed to be super haunted. I think even like some of the buildings our family had.
I was gonna say like some ghost hunter people came up.
Yeah, so some of our family's buildings that we used to own, they had ghost hunters approach them, and they wanted to do like a tour of the buildings and like try to discover ghosts. But that's not great for business. Like,
depends on the kind of business you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way: if you want to have like weddings and that
contemporary
kind of thing,
events, yeah.
If it's Halloween parties, that's different.
Fake cobwebs, great, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't remember watching as much ghost hunter programming. I feel like there wasn't as much ghost hunter programming when we were young. At least that we were aware
there was.
of.
I mean, there was scripted stuff. Like X-Files was big.
But I'm talking about like reality. television.
No, reality TV didn't pop off until you're right. That's and I've never watched really any of that stuff, but I know of it obviously. I think that was a big like mid. I think the found footage horror movie boom probably gave that a boost. Like Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, like late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s.
What was that? Sorry to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
Just what popped into my head. What was that one British program where everybody was convinced that like it was an actual haunting, and it was like viewers were like freaked out by it? I think it was Ghost Watch.
Ghost Watch is like a TV movie where the premise of it is that they're doing like this person's house is haunted, whatever, and the twist, spoiler alert, at the end is like, the ghost is real and like it has like used this broadcast to like get into the homes of everybody who's watching it. It was a pretty early, I didn't watch it until years afterwards, but it's a pretty influential early piece of found footage. Like Blair Witch obviously is credited in a lot of ways of popularizing that genre, but it was by no means the first found footage horror movie, but it did tap into the then nascent internet as a form of like viral marketing, like making up like fake bios for all the actors, and that was new. Like that way, that's why it really took off the way that it did, was the internet was still becoming what it is now in the 90s, and the idea of just something as simple by modern standards as like a fake blog for this thing, and like kind of putting little things in the press about the actors went missing afterwards, and their IMDb page or whatever says they're deceased. Like it seems so simple now, but back at the time that was enough to get people to be like, did they just put like a snuff movie in theaters? Like, holy cow, what is this? And now you watch these found footage movies and they're just so they have these Hollywood budgets and they're so ridiculous. But like there was a time where it was like people were genuinely like, is this a real? Did this actually happen? Like it was questioned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess like real quick, because I mentioned this earlier with the Bell Witch, but like I feel like there's a lot of stories of like witch/ghost, like a witch, but she's doing things that are kind of ghostly or spectral in behavior, and I kind of felt like the Blair Witch was that way a little bit, and I do remember not seeing it because I've always been kind of hesitant around scary movies. And I don't think you saw the Blair Witch Project when it first came out.
Not at the time, no. I
because
saw
we
it
probably weren't allowed to watch it.
Many years later, no.
but I do remember some of the craze and people having those conversations about like, hey, is this real or not? And it's it's something that's really hard to ever recreate. I think in today's day and age. Now we're having other discussions about what's real and what's not. But like at the time of that, it was really groundbreaking.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I've been thinking about it while we've been talking, and one distinction, we started off supernatural versus paranormal. Maybe this only makes sense to me, but I was going to say, I feel like paranormal is more sci-fi and supernatural is more fantasy. Like I would refer, I don't know, would you ever call an alien supernatural?
Well, maybe.
Would you call a witch paranormal or supernatural? I feel like supernatural has more of a mystical, like the show is supernatural.
But the paranormal I would actually associate more with ghosts.
Yes, true. It's paranormal activity. Yeah.
Yeah. But paranormal was
magic. Does paranormal involve magic?
No, because aliens are paranormal, right?
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. I think supernatural has more of like a magical bent to it.
Maybe.
Like squares and rectangles. Like maybe all supernatural things are paranormal, but not all paranormal things are supernatural.
That could be.
If only colloquially.
We might be getting closer. We might be onto something here.
I don't mean to dwell on semantics, but
let's take that opportunity to bridge to another paranormal activity, shall we say, which is UFOs and aliens. So, I mean, where do we even begin? I mean, this one's initially this one's initially a little easier to define. It's extraterrestrials, beings from other worlds. More recently, I've heard interesting theories about them being sort of interdimensional. So maybe not just from outside of Earth, but maybe a parallel world that's seeping into our own. And I won't get too deeply into this because it's a whole tangent, but like I've even heard theories about how ghosts might actually be, not strictly speaking aliens, but ghosts may actually be either beings or humans from other worlds that are seeping into our own, and that's why they have this ephemeral quality, is because they're not really in our plane of existence per se.
Sure.
Or it could be a whole separate thing about time, and then it's actually time happening out of sequence, and there's things from our past that are folding or otherwise kind of blending into our present. And so that's like, well, that's pretty weird to think about. But anyway, to get back on the subject of aliens and I guess let's say UFOs, because oftentimes we attribute unidentified flying objects or UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, we attribute them often to little green men or little gray men or that sort of thing. What would you say are the sort of quintessential aliens when you think back to sort of, our childhood decades ago compared to now?
Sure. I mean, a lot of the imagery that you kind of described there is accurate. The Greys, as they would call them, and I mean, the little green
Big
man thing,
eyes, big
yeah,
head.
the little green man thing is kind of a joke. Like, I mean, people obviously that came from somewhere, but like the image that I always had. And again, X-Files, a lot of those things kind of popularized that, but like these little things with like the black eyes that have almost like kind of an insectile, slender appearance
Little
to
fingers.
them. Yeah, and like the ghost books, I had a decent amount of alien books as a kid
I think I felt like we had more alien than ghost.
It was a photo finish there. I mean, I had a lot of alien books too, and some of them were just talking about alien movies, and I would learn about like a lot of movies that I didn't see until years later. But some of them were like, oh, this guy had this sighting, and this farm in Brazil, or this couple that like lost time in their car and whatever, and those again, those actually kind of scared me more than the ghost stuff. I don't know why. I think it's because the ghost stories didn't they would just kind of scare somebody, but the alien stories the stories where they would like take people. Yeah. They would like do stuff to them or like make them lose time. That was freaked me out more than the ghosts actually.
Yeah, I think there's almost like a little bit more plausibility in some ways to aliens. I think including as a kid, because like ghosts are pretty out there. Like the ways in which they do things, the ways they describe things. I feel like relative to aliens, there's a little bit more believability that like in the infinity of space, which is already kind of scary to think about how big space is, and then something to come from that, and to just have technology and motives, beyond our understanding. That's really alarming, and it feels, to me at least, it's like I believe in the possibility of aliens significantly more than I believe in the possibility of ghosts.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
In terms of different types of aliens, you identified, the little green men / gray men, the guys with the big heads.
Yeah.
I seem to recall reptilians.
Yeah, reptilians. Yes, that kind of becomes its own little odd conspiracy theory, which is probably its own subject. But
because weirdly they're the ones that want to get into our government, not the other ones.
I don't know. Yeah,
but they get the reptilians. Yeah. I don't remember learning about these as much as a kid, but I learned about them over time. Which is like was it Hyperboreans or whoever, which are like the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, sort of almost like Aryan aliens.
That sounds like its own dicey conspiracy theory, but
I mean, apparently they're a category of them. So you've got those ones. You've got the ones that are like really more difficult to identify as humanoid, like your alien from the movie Alien, the xenomorph. Yep. They're those kind of freakier looking ones. Now here's actually a good one of a compare and contrast between then and now. Was anybody taking things seriously in terms, because you had things like crop circles and people reporting sightings of mysterious flying crafts or encounters of getting abducted or whatever that were more sort of National Enquirer headlines. I'm struggling, not that I'm an expert, but I'm struggling to think of an example of sort of I guess our government, sort of taking things more seriously compared to now. Now that's something as a kid I never would have thought I would live to see the day where our government was having very serious meetings with high-ranking military personnel talking about these UAPs, and of course all of that completely fizzled out, and it's hard to know if that's because there's nothing to see here or maybe there is and it's some elaborate conspiracy. But I mean in the past few years we've had some very credible people come forward saying that there are these crafts, not necessarily saying that they've seen aliens, but there's crafts out there that are capable of maneuvers that are supernatural, that are paranormal, whatever you want to call it. So what are your thoughts on that as far as how?
I suspect I think I just know that there have been concerns. This has been something that eyes have been on ever since we had the modern conception of the UFO. I mean, whatever you think about Roswell or Area 51, a lot of this stuff, it's just because if these things are from an enemy nation or however you conceptualize that, we want to make sure that they're not looking at us or taking, have this tech we have to worry about or whatever. That's kind of the way I look at it, is that these ships, whatever they are or have been, even if they don't exist, or even if they do exist, but they are just other people, like people in high places want to keep an eye on that. I mean, I always think about that line from, I think it was Batman versus Superman or whatever. It was like, if there's even a 1% chance that he's our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. Like, I think that's what the government is like. If there's a 1% chance that aliens exist, or if there's a 1% chance that the Russians have like this craft that can move omnidirectionally and teleport, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. And that's just, for better or worse, that's just what some people, that's what their job is to prepare for all these contingencies, to keep an eye on these things and make sure that there's not something out there. So I guess the short answer to your question is I think that has always been a thing. We're only now seeing more of it. One, because everyone's got phones, everyone's got the internet. Like when these hearings and when these things happen, there's eyes on it in the way than there was before. And I think there's probably just, they recognize that there's more people in the government who are believe in this stuff, correctly or not, and there's more of an appetite for people to like hear about it. And people are more conspiracy minded, or like those things have become more mainstream, and whether or not that's good or bad is maybe a topic for another time. But I think there probably have always been people seeing these things and talking about them in and out of various halls of government, but the common person and the common congressperson or whomever is more interested in seeing it broadcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's a number of those factors at play, and I don't know if anything will ultimately come of it. I don't know if that kind of information we can really be trusted to handle. That's a pretty monumental thing to be like, we're not alone in the universe, and there's technology out there that we can't explain, can't compete with, and can't begin to understand. That's pretty overwhelming. So I don't know if we'll ever get a definitive answer on it, but it is interesting to think about when we were kids reading these books about UFOs and aliens and whatnot. At the time, for me, there was never a thought that this would ever be taken seriously, that it was always going to be something that was just kind of a silly fringe topic, and now it's like people sitting down in hearings being like, please help us understand what is going on with these crafts.
Yep.
That's like, whoa.
Yep. Times change.
Now, when will Congress have the ghost hearings where people will come forward and they'll be like, we need to understand ghosts?
No,
because
that's I mean, in all seriousness, that's what I've been saying is like, no half measures. Like if there's even a possibility that ghosts are real, we need to get top men on this thing and figure things out.
Wouldn't that be, because a lot of this stuff is always motivated by like the military trying to get a tactical advantage.
Yeah.
So like, talk about like an excellent military, weapon.
Yeah.
Is if ghosts were real, and then you could like, you could weaponize them.
So there's a movie on Netflix, and I'm not going to spoil the ending because you should still watch it at some point. It's called Spectral.
Okay.
And the basic initial premise of it is soldiers versus ghosts.
Okay. That's tempting.
Yeah. so I won't spoil the ending because it's so insane, but it has its moments. Have you ever seen a UFO?
I've seen mysterious lights in the sky, but normally it just ends up being a plane or a faraway planet or something else that's very easily explained. But I think I know your answer. Didn't you say that you saw something one time that you couldn't explain?
Yeah, and the specific context is very strange. Has a very dreamlike quality to it, and I don't. And again, like, I mean, I have the rational part of my mind where it's like, something happened. I saw something. I chose to see something I don't know, and I have a very specific memory. I was in my late teens, I think, and we were driving up to our grandparents' house. I think maybe I was in the back right seat, and I think either you were driving or our parents were driving or something. And I remember specifically, actively thinking that I wished something interesting would happen to me. and that's what makes the next part sound very, dubious. But I remember looking out the window, and I saw this thing in the sky. It was kind of shaped, I remember, like an upside down ice cream scoop, like this. And like, but rounded, and
like a dome,
sort of like if you just take this cup here, like, and you don't have this part at the bottom, so it's like a scoop like this.
Yeah.
And I remember just observing it, and not like freaking out. Like, I mean, it would make sense just for anybody, but especially me, that I would like, what the heck? But I didn't. I just remember just being sort of like
in awe.
Yeah, I mean, I just like. And then I must have like just looked back later and I remember afterwards being like a little rattled, and I remember us being at the house where we stopped off, and I mentioned what I had seen, and I think that maybe you were a little bit alarmed too. I don't know what that was. I don't know what happened there. Because it's very absurd to be mentally actively thinking, man, I wish something interesting happened to me when you see UFO. But like that's just what happened, and I don't know why that happened. I don't know why. I've described it the way that it happened. I was totally awake. I was like not on anything. I wasn't tired. I don't know what I could have seen like that would have been hanging up there that would have like appeared that way to me, like a reflection of a light. In my memory, I was completely lucid in the back of the car, and like I manifested a UFO or something. And I'm like,
was it moving or was
I remember it like kind of moving at the same speed as us. So whatever I saw, maybe it was like a reflection. I remember it feeling. It looked solid. Like it looked like it was just up there, like following us, or we were following it, or something. I don't know. I mean, and I have dreams sometimes. I don't think they're related to this, but like that is something that I would have dreams about a lot when I was younger. Is these visions of like enormous crafts in the sky, and I think that was just from movies, and like it doesn't mean anything. But like that is an image that has always kind of alarmed me. Is not even really, lasers getting shot off or like the aliens themselves. It is like the emergence of this, like an Independence Day or whatever, like this enormous thing that just shows up in the sky.
Yeah.
The megalophobia of the whole thing. Like, and this wasn't that big. Like, I remembered it being large enough, like, that it was noticeable. I don't remember if it had windows or anything, but that's the only thing other than what you described, where it's like, oh, that's some lights or whatever. Like in my mind, in my memory, that was just like a straight up alien ship or something that just appeared. And I'm like, okay, did I make that happen? Could I do if I just sit here and wish for something amazing to happen? Is the UFO going to show up behind us? I don't know. So I don't know what that means. I have no idea. I'm sorry. Like I hate to sound like a broken record, but that's what it is for me.
Oh, that's really weird. Yeah, I don't know. There's part of me that like wishes I could have that kind of a story because it's like very exciting to share, and you feel like you've been witness to this really special thing that not many people can say they've seen before. But then you also, maybe to an extent, are a little bit burdened by like, now how do I try to make sense of that? And like sometimes it's maybe a little bit scary, or for people that have the more extreme examples of either actually or at least thinking they were abducted and what that experience was like. That's pretty difficult to process.
Yeah. Because I don't doubt that those people went through something, but whether that was an alien or whether it was
psychosis or something,
sleep paralysis.
I mean,
talk about stuff that I'm glad I don't have any childhood memories of. Holy cow.
Well, that's another topic of, I guess, paranormal / supernatural is people who have encounters in their sleep, people who have encounters in their dreams, and there's a variety of entities that people will have encounters with. One of them being the Hat Man, who's a figure that appears sort of almost like if you can imagine being in bed and you're looking into sort of a dimly lit doorway, and the silhouette of like a man with a wide-brimmed hat standing in the doorway watching you. There's the Hag, which is sort of this kind of like woman with like long, dark, almost kind of wet hair, and she will come in, and often accounts are that she like comes and sits on your chest while you're sleeping and makes it to where you can't breathe. And kind of looms over you. Did you have any experiences like that growing up, as far as witnessing any beings?
I never did. I'm fortunate that I haven't had. To my recollection, I've never had sleep paralysis. If I did, it was very brief, and there were no visions associated with it.
Yeah.
Because I know that there are people for whom it is something unfortunately quite common. And there's a documentary called The Nightmare, which is honestly one of the scariest things I've ever seen, because they just do reenactments of a couple of people's like descriptions of their night terrors.
Ooh.
It's good chills thinking about that. But that is where a lot of I don't think this explains all of them, but honestly, a tremendous amount of paranormal stuff. I think if I was a betting man, I would say that a lot of those stories of people getting taken by aliens, like that's a consistent thing. It's like, oh, I couldn't move and whatever. And like, yeah, they probably had a nightmare. Like they probably saw a sci-fi movie or heard about something and they had a really bad nightmare. Like I'm not poo-pooing that. Like that's freaky, but like, because it feels real. That's the mind is so alarming in that way. And I know that the same thing can happen. I mean, the concept of incubi and succubi and these demonic entities that like sit on your chest. That's where you can find old art of like little gremlin dudes sitting on someone's chest. That's just a thing. Like whether that means there is something out there, or whether that just means that humans have this thing where they have trouble breathing in their sleep and they internalize that as this presence that is oppressing them. I think for me, I had a couple of epileptic seizures as a kid, and that was not fun. I mean, that's kind of the opposite, where you're moving too much. And then in later years, I would have night terrors a lot. I would, again, sleep paralysis, you're not moving and you're awake. Night terror, you're not awake and you're moving. And I laugh about it now because I haven't had them for a while, but like it would happen a lot. I think it was stress. I would wake up screaming. I would like run out of my bed to the point where I would like accidentally cut myself or like, you know, move things and not even really know it. And when I would move places, when I would move to a new apartment, it would happen a lot. I think it's something about the environment. It just when I'm troubled in that way, and it would come out in that way, I think.
Yeah, I do remember you having some of those experiences when we were kids, and it among one of the more, I laugh about it now.
Yeah.
But among the more tame examples of, you want to talk about, you know, the hat man or whatever. You never showed up wearing a hat.
Yeah.
But there were a few times, because I used to sleep with my door open, and when I was a kid, because we lived on opposite ends of the same hallway, and there were 1 or 2 times where I woke up and I looked over and you were just standing in my doorway, and you were asleep. You were just like sleepwalking and standing there. But I was be like, turn, go to bed. And you'd normally just be like, and then you'd like turn around and go back or whatever.
Yeah.
But like there were a few times where I woke up and there was a presence in my doorway. It just happened to be my brother, but it's kind of like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, and then there was a time that I attacked you in my sleep after I was taking malaria medication. But
yeah, that was a pretty rough evening.
That's an unrelated. We went overseas to India.
That was India, yeah.
India in our teens, and there was this medication for not getting malaria, and because I think our mom saw something too. Like one of the effects apparently was like not psychosis, but like hallucinations, something like that. And I had a nightmare. I think it was maybe a werewolf or something involved. I don't really recall the specifics. And I like went over to we were in a hotel room, and I got out of bed. I was like, ah! So sometimes I have become the paranormal threatening presence of the night. That's the real twist of this whole conversation.
To defeat the paranormal, you must become paranormal. Now you have your account of paranormal experience with having seen a UAP. I actually have an account of seeing what I would classify as the Hag. And I think I've shared this story with you before, and maybe I've shared it with you folks out there as well. But forgive me if I tell the story one more time, because it's a good one for Halloween. It is probably the only quote unquote like paranormal supernatural experience I've ever had. And I say that because I've had nightmares before, I've had scary dreams, but you can kind of always tell that it's a dream. Like even if in the nightmare itself you're scared, there's a little bit of like a haziness or a malleability to what's going on. Events happen in inconsistent order. You know, there's really just outlandish things that occur. In this case, I was as awake as I am talking to you right now. I was completely lucid. There was no dream state, haze. But what had occurred was, I think you were maybe already away to college. Our parents were gone on a trip, and so I was home alone for probably the better part of a week. And I was sleeping in my bed, and I had a tendency, I still do, to sleep on like my stomach with like maybe my head turned to the side, or maybe sleep on one of my sides. I don't really sleep on my back very much. But I remember waking up in the night, and I had fallen asleep on my stomach. So my face was kind of almost down into my pillow. And my door started to slowly open. And this is where the sleep paralysis type stuff comes in. I couldn't move. And I remember being in bed thinking to myself, oh, like, first of all, I can't move. This is really scary. Why can't I move my body? I could see out of my peripheral vision, but I couldn't, and the door to my room was kind of near to my headrest in my bed. So I could see the door moving, but I couldn't turn to see who it was. And then immediately after I had that thought of like, oh crap, I can't move, the follow-up thought was, there's no one here. Like, parents are gone, brother's away to college, there is no one else in this household. Who the hell is opening this door? And then I saw like some kind of figure come into my room, and then she started talking to me. I could tell it was a she, because I could tell by the voice that it was like a woman's voice. And it was kind of this like, kind of lilting sort of sound, but I could tell there was like a menace to it. It wasn't a kind voice. It was like a very like malicious presence. And it was like talking to me as if it was my mom. But I knew it wasn't my mom, because again, parents were gone. And so she was saying stuff to me like, oh, it's going to be all right. Don't worry. It's going to be fine. But it felt like threatening instead of calming.
Yeesh.
And the worst part of it was I felt her come up to the side of the bed, and then she started to lean over.
Oh boy.
And I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. And I remember all of the muscles in my neck up into my head like tensing as I like fought with like every like inch of my being to move. Like I had to get away. I had to like at least see what was coming towards me, and I could not move. So I was like fighting and straining. My eyes, I could feel like bulging out of my head. And the thing, whatever it was, came down, and it was so close to me that I could see its face up against mine. And the face was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was like, you know those like pictures you see now on creepypastas where it's like a human, but like the eyes are the wrong size and the mouth is messed up.
Yeah.
And it's like dark in areas and the pupils are like too big. It was kind of like that, sort of like a melted human uncanny valley thing. And then she was just like staring at me with these like lidless eyes saying like, it's gonna be all right, as she was like leaning into me. And then I was like fighting. I couldn't scream. I couldn't use anything in my vocal cords. And then the moment that I finally snapped my head to the side, she was gone.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't like I like woke up. I could just move my body again. And now I'm just alone in my bedroom in this house. And she wasn't there anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, this is really terrifying.
No, that's sleep paralysis, and I think it can just happen. I mean, not to freak either of us out any more than we already are, but like, I think it can just happen, and there are just people who it happens to more often, unfortunately. Like, like anybody, not anybody, but like a seizure. Like it can happen. It can happen to anybody, but there are people who are epileptics, and I think that unfortunately night terrors are one of those things. Night terrors and sleep paralysis, and yeah, I mean, I think the brain, like, you talked about like the possibility of ghosts or aliens being like interdimensional beings. Part of me almost wonders if it's like that, or there are things that just exist, and when you get into a certain state, you can see them, and they probably can't actually interact. I don't think anyone's been ever been killed by a ghost or like a sleep paralysis demon or whatever, but like they, you know, if I had to like pick a theory for like what is the deal with all of this stuff, then yeah, like maybe there's stuff out there that just like, you know, like animals that can see certain spectrums of light. Like maybe there are just beings that just exist and we can only see them when our brain is at a certain state.
Well, it's like the John dies at the end.
Yes,
you know, those
soy
books
sauce,
with the soy sauce. And the human brain, you know, is incredibly powerful and is able to imagine things with a lot of vivid reality as you perceive it. I mean, I've heard accounts of people who have had certain types of like schizophrenia or, you know, serious types of psychosis, to where they will see like spiders swarming all over their walls. They'll see like ivy and vines like growing over, you know, doors and buildings. There was one really like harrowing account that I'd heard at one point about somebody who like, I think they like woke up and their spouse was, you know, again, to talk about things in the night, they woke up and their spouse was crouched at the foot of their bed, staring at them with a big grin on their face, which is like, you know, pants defecating enough on its own.
Yeah.
And then they stood up and did a backflip and disappeared.
Oh God.
which is like kind of rad, but also like incredibly scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, seeing those kinds of things, you know, that could account for some of these paranormal experiences.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you want to talk about like turn of the 90s. I mean, like the Matrix, where it's like, you know, what is real?
Yeah.
How do you define real? If real is just what you feel, taste, touch, and see, then real is just electrical signals being interpreted by your brain.
Yeah.
And I think that people can consciously, I mean, you know, we don't do this, but like psychedelics, and there are things you can take where you'll see, maybe not, hopefully not that, but like your mind will enter a different state, and like and your mind enters kind of a psychedelic state when you're drunk or high, or like, I mean, when you're really tired or like in between wakefulness and sleep. That is a kind of altered state. That is a kind of altered mind state. And I think a lot of everything that we're talking about, ghosts, witches, UFOs, aliens, all these things, they could be real, or they could be visions, or they could be both. They could be both.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's you know, you make an interesting point about senses, because there's things that our mind can invent that's not really there, but then conversely, you know, the things being there that our mind can't normally even imagine or perceive. You know, one of the things that I think of quite often is people will talk about, I felt like I could feel something or someone watching me. Like the other day, like I was visiting with our dad, and he was talking about being out in the woods by our house, and he said that he could just feel eyes on him. And I thought that was really interesting, and I feel like I've had times myself, maybe you have too, where you feel like you're being watched. And it's one of those things everybody talks about, but nobody really seems to interrogate further, which is like, what exactly are you feeling, and how and why, like, can you feel that? Like, how can a person know that they are being perceived by something else? Because oftentimes it does end up being that, like, you were an animal, you know, was hunting you, or you were being watched. I could see that being evolved as an evolutionary trait, the sense of awareness of the presence of something that could be a threat to us. But like, what is going on there? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it could be like a sixth sense. Like, I mean, people, that phrase kind of gets watered down to be like psychic powers, and it's like, well, no, I mean, there's animals that can, like those dogs that can, you know, tell when someone's gonna have a seizure or
has cancer.
or cancer, like pheromones. Like, I'd comfortably put money on the possibility that we have the ability to sense things that we aren't able to articulate.
Yeah.
Like, that's, I mean, all language is, you know, speech is just one example. Like, all language is finding ways to describe feelings that we already have. Colors, the distinctions between different shades of red. We have the ability to feel and perceive all of these things. They just don't mean something until we're able to, like, harness them and describe them. So
right, it's like how, what is it, like languages like Russian have words for colors that we don't have words for in English, and so they can literally perceive those colors in ways that we can't.
Yeah, and that's just one really simple example of something that I think happens all the time, which is where until we understand how to conceptualize our senses, and I think that there are senses that we don't know how to conceptualize yet, that we have things we do feel, and we don't know how, we just do. And I think that maybe there are people out there who are more in touch with that, and whether you're spiritual or not, and they're able to tap into that and make sense of it. But I think maybe there are people that struggle with it. Maybe there are people, maybe even ourselves, where you feel bad or good or weird in some way and you don't know why, and well, it could be you're picking up on something that somebody else is putting down and you don't quite know it.
Yeah, yeah. And to speak again on, you know, I feel like we're kind of dipping our toes in here and there to the sort of the Bygone Bros aspect of some of these things, but it's also just fun to talk about this stuff without necessarily tying it to sort of a retro and present compare and contrast. But one quick thing I was going to add on that note is an interesting observation that people often talk about kids being more attuned to certain things, and that as we grow older, we may actually lose our ability to perceive certain things. You know, like actually on the subject of ghosts, you know, people often, you know, kids will have these, at least certainly in popular culture, I think a lot of these stories, the kids are depicted as the ones that are more attuned to what's going on, and it's the adults that are overly logical and dismissive and not able or willing to perceive certain things.
Sure.
Same goes for animals. You know, it's interesting to think about kids versus adults and past versus present, and you know, were we more attuned to things without realizing it, you know, as kids, that now we aren't even able to be aware of as adults. We're missing out on more paranormal encounters. I don't know.
It's possible. I mean, I think some of it is that kids are just, I don't know,
open-minded.
I don't want to say kids are stupid, but like but like they don't. Yeah, they may mistake things and they may not understand things, but you know, a different way of looking at it is that they have not become so constrained by what we call logic, and they have more wonder, and they have more of a
open-mindedness.
Open-mindedness, yes. Before everything is drilled into them over time. So that's absolutely. I'm happy to entertain that possibility. Yeah.
Now I feel as though, I mean, there's, of course, many different things that fall into paranormal and supernatural, but we have so far omitted one of the most important categories. We touched on it very briefly as we were rattling stuff off at the outset of this episode, but getting into cryptids.
Yes.
And what I would I guess say is more supernatural. I feel like I'm still struggling with supernatural versus paranormal, but certainly maybe science fiction in as much as these are sort of mythical beings that may or may not exist. But out there in the world of cryptids, have you ever had an encounter with a creature that you could not explain? Or known someone who had an encounter?
Well, I have this weird memory of seeing a giant snake by our house once.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it could have just been a dream, but I have this. I think, I mean, it would have to be, because how does this even make any sense? Like this, I mean, compared to the UFO thing, like this is just clearly something I probably just imagined. But I have some memory of going into like the creek or the woods behind our house and see like a big old like boa constrictor python or something wrapped around a tree. But I think that was. Again, I don't think that actually happened. But like those woods around our house growing up, they did invite. I mean the PNW, Washington, Cascadia, whatever you want to call this region, trees, hills. There's such a sense of like often justified trepidation when you wander off the beaten path, because there are things that are dangerous: wolves and bees and bears and coyotes and things like that. Like you do want to watch out for some stuff, but I mean this. I would think about those things. I would wonder about them, but I don't know that I ever saw anything, and I think that probably was because when we were out camping or whatever, I sort of stayed where the light was.
yeah. I mean, I think, I'm trying to think if I ever, I mean, I'm sure I had times where something kind of spooked me when we were out camping as kids, but I think normally it ultimately just it turned out to be a coyote, or I don't think we ever had a bear, but like something that could have been a bear that you heard kind of thumping around in the dark in the distance. As far as within the state of Washington, I thought I would rattle off some of our most well-known, sort of a primer on Washington state cryptids. The most famous, of course, is Bigfoot.
Yep.
Bigfoot, who was famously sighted in what is now called Ape Canyon, down by, would that be, I guess, near Mount St. Helens?
Something like, yeah. You've been there, right? Or is that Ape Caves?
Ape Caves is next to where Ape Canyon is.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, so if you've ever been to Ape Caves before, the famous lava tunnels that you can hike through, the lava tubes, that's down where Bigfoot was sighted. I think back in like the 20s, there was an account of some guys, maybe like gold miners or something, but some guys that were living in a cabin, and they were attacked by these large sort of humanoid apes, and they had to defend themselves from the attack. They were like throwing like rocks at the cabin and like trying to break down the door and like shaking the walls, and they were shooting at them and like trying to keep them away. They were you're up on the roof, they were trying to keep them up. And so there was this account that they had of interacting with these creatures. And I think it like became like nationally acknowledged, to the point where like I think like hunters and taxidermists and people were trying to come to Washington and like trap whatever these things were that they said that they had encountered. So it gives you an idea at least of how seriously people were taking it, and because you have to take these guys at their word. But I think that's largely what led to the legend of Bigfoot. I am sure there are people out there that will dispute this. California supposedly likes to say that they're where Bigfoot comes from. I heartily disagree.
I think there's probably regional variants. We've got the Yeti, we've got the skunk ape. Like there's room for more big feet out there.
Certainly, but I feel like it's a statement. It's a moment of pride.
Yeah.
To say like, when you're in Washington and you see all the Bigfoot stuff, that's because he's a Washington guy.
Bigfoot country, yes.
But you're in Bigfoot. California's not Bigfoot country. Yeah. Oregon's not Bigfoot country, but Washington's Bigfoot country. Yep. So let that be known. But of course we have Bigfoot. There's the tree octopus, Pacific Northwest tree octopus.
That's more of a bit of a goof, but yes.
Yes, there are accounts of a tree-dwelling octopus.
Yeah.
I learned recently of Batsquatch. Have you heard of Batsquatch?
It's like half bat, half Bigfoot?
Yeah, I've heard it described as sort of like a jacked Mothman.
That's, I don't know if I can take that. That's...
Yeah. Apparently, like, the entire thing about Batsquatch was like based on one person's account of like driving along the usual driving along a road at night, and then something gets in front of the car, and it was this huge kind of bat-like Sasquatch creature that somebody said they had seen. So Batsquatch apparently is one that we have here. There is, because I was reading up on some of this in prep for this episode to refresh my memory, And apparently the Tacoma Narrows has a cryptid.
Really?
There is an account of there being just sort of like an impossibly large giant octopus that lives in the Tacoma Narrows, like deep down in the water. I don't know if it was ever attributed with the Galloping Gertie, bridge crash.
Oh boy.
That was probably unrelated. But
well, while we're on the subject, though, I mean, underwater creatures, that's the easiest for me to believe. Because I mean, we've mapped some planets better than we have the bottom of the ocean, and there are just straight up giant monsters down there. Like
confirmed.
I mean, maybe not like the capital K Kraken, but like a giant squid, 6 to 1, half dozen of the other. And some of these creatures, like, we don't know. I mean, frankly, I mean, you tell me something crazy is down there, I'll believe you.
Yeah, I agree. I think people love to say this, I don't know if it's true, but supposedly we know more about outer space than we know about our own oceans, just in terms of the sheer size and depth and difficulty of exploring them. So it would not surprise me if there were still, I don't know, prehistoric, like, dinosaur type, your Loch Ness monster kind of things deep down in the ocean. Certainly the giant squid is that, like you said. That's something that's massive and alien and, it should not be, but it is, so I'm certainly freaked out by monsters in the deep.
And that's too, is like when I was a kid, animals in general fascinated me, and I would read these, gosh, I forget what they were called, like zoo cards or something. Our grandparents had these little
Zoo cards, yeah.
Zoo cards, yeah. I don't know. I think they might have been our dad's, but they were like these little, they're like almost like not bigger than index cards, but each one was maybe a yay big, and they'd be about an animal. And the ones that I liked the most were the abyss creatures. The gulper fish and the anglerfish, and I thought they were so spooky and kind of creepy looking, and some of the bugs and stuff too, because like those were, I mean, sometimes there are animals that we think are cryptids now that people used to think were cryptids, like a giraffe. I think they used to call them camelopards because people said they were like a leopard crossed with a camel.
Or the kangaroo.
The kangaroo, yeah, and
platypus.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weird animals. I mean, to this day, I will go on my phone and randomly, and I remember a couple of years ago when I learned what a quokka was, and it's a pleasant little animal, but I'm just
the
like,
guy that's always like, ah.
Yes, because there are animals. I mean, whenever I learn about a new mammal that I never heard about before, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of discovering a cryptid because there's just an animal that is new to me.
Yeah.
And they don't spit acid or leap tall buildings in a single bound or whatever some of these things supposedly can do. But there's wonder to be found out there, and I think that someday we may very well, it may not be Nessie or Bigfoot or something, but I think that we're going to be surprised. Hopefully we just find some of these things before deforestation or whatever.
Well, not to be a downer, but like we are losing a lot of species are going extinct right now.
Yeah.
And there are, I don't know how this is calculated, but there are sort of scientific forecasts that estimate how many species that have been lost that we actually haven't discovered. And that's like the real disheartening part, is to think about like the species that we never even cataloged or got to meet that have now already gone extinct. Now, here's a question. Do you think that Bigfoot exists? Maybe not exactly the way he's described, but do you think something like a Bigfoot could exist in North America?
Theoretically, because here's the thing, it's like the concept of Bigfoot in and of itself is not inherently supernatural. Like, it's a big hairy man-ape. Like, again, he's not casting spells or whatever. Like,
we can talk about that.
Because like I was gonna say, I know there's some lore that might say otherwise, but like in concept, it's not that outlandish in a vacuum. But the idea that there is one or more, like, what I guess you would call, I don't know, like a Neanderthal, like a differently evolved person, that's a bit much for me. I think the most I would be willing to argue is that there might be like, kind of like when there's like mole people or like people living, I don't know if that's, politically correct term, but like, well, it's cities where there's like people that live underground.
Respect the mole people, all right?
But in serious, like like in cities when there's people that like live underground and they kind of develop like subcultures and they have like a
subterranean cultures.
Well, they have a community, yeah. And I'm open to the possibility that maybe there's some kind of enclave of people living like that in the woods and people mistaking for Sasquatches, like kind of a very crunchy uncontacted tribe, basically. I don't know.
I actually hadn't even thought about the idea that Bigfoot's actually just a human.
Or one or more humans, because I mean, enough time passes, unless he's immortal, it's probably different big feet or a family of Sasquatches or whatever. Like maybe they're just living off the grid, and they're leaning into that myth because they want people to leave them alone, or conversely, they want to be famous. I'm just totally right off the top of my head here. I don't even.
Well, there's this has also been attributed to accounts of like werewolves, but there's that condition called, what is it, lycanthropy?
Lycanthropy is being a werewolf, but there are people that.
What's the condition though where you grow hair all over your body?
Trichomaxa something, I forget, but no, like that's probably where a lot of those myths came from. It's hyper. Yeah, there's a thing you can get where you grow like a ton of hair all over your face and body. And yeah.
So, I mean, that could account for possibly.
Yeah, because people, and that's the truly dark side of a lot of this. I think at least some. I'm quite confident that at least some of these folk tales come from somebody who, back in the day, I mean, people are still not super accepting all the time, but like back in the day when it was, people would just get, kicked out of town if they look kind of funny.
Like witches, yeah.
Yeah, they had a birth defect or some kind of congenital condition, and they looked a bit off, or they were too big or small, or had something going on or whatever. They would live out in the shack in the woods or something, and they would become, and that's not really fun at all. That's just kind of sad. But that doesn't change the fact that I think a lot of the stories come from, in good faith or not, these people that looked or did things that were unusual. And you mentioned the witches, and that obviously in this country has a really, really unfortunate history with who that label was applied to, and that's still the case in some places overseas. That's why I think it's so important that we understand where these stories come from, and it's good to have some fun with them. But I think at the same time, you go very bygone, you go very far back in the past, and this stuff it can kind of get a bit ugly.
Right. And not all of this was necessarily fun back in the day for everyone involved. On the subject of is there a Bigfoot or not, I have always been open to the possibility that there is an as yet undiscovered, what I would call sort of the great North American ape. Mm-hmm. I think I've heard other people use a similar term before, but the concept would be, there are apes in Africa. What if there was some sort of similar species of very reclusive, very, very much shies away from, humans, shies away from anything related to civilization, and lives deep in the wilderness. And it's some sort of ape-like creature. Maybe it's sometimes or always bipedal, and it, is just living its best life. Yep. And occasionally people do stumble upon them. Maybe they're extremely endangered, and so that's why it's so rare that we encounter them. But there's somehow just enough of them to procreate. Like, I could feasibly see that as being very unlikely, but like, that could be a thing. Yeah. But I don't think it's like a missing link or something like that. I've always kind of thought that was a little bit silly, because if it's a missing link, then how could we, be alive now?
I'm Chewbacca looking dude. That's a bit much for me.
Yeah, and that sort of thing. But what else was I going to say on that? I feel like the reason that's even a little bit, I'm skeptical on it. Is I feel like, because again, like you said, with phones, these kinds of things, it feels like by now somebody would have had a drone, their phone, one of the bazillion Sasquatch hunting shows would actually find some evidence. Yeah. Like, it just seems to me like by now we would have found him. But at the same time, I think it is a little easy for us to overestimate our own knowledge of the world. Yeah. Even with cameras that we have now, because like you said, on the ocean, there's all these things we have not yet discovered. Like, I'm not going to say that it's like every
aquatic Bigfoot.
Now there you go. See, he's got big flippers instead of big feet. He's swimming around, and you got aquatic ambience playing.
Yeah, there we go.
So you might be on something there.
Continue. I just didn't want to like let that fall into the ether.
Let's catalog that. I guess if you take a trip sometime to like a major national forest, and you just look off into the distance of the spaces that haven't been taken over by human beings, you start to realize really quickly how hard it is to see through the tree canopy, how dense it is, how vast it is. Yep. And then it starts to seem a little bit more feasible that like, I could see there being a handful of creatures out there that are extremely difficult to find, and especially if it's something that where it has evolved in such a way that it survives by avoiding detection and by staying away from other people, you know, from humans. I mean, then maybe, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah. Well, the environment is a big factor.
Yeah. What else in the paranormal and supernatural is worth covering?
I mean, gosh, I think just for me it would just be kind of a meta thing where it's talking about all the books I read about other random things that aren't like spirit photography or like the Tunguska explosion. Like I would
Ouija
just
boards.
Well, yeah, I would just as a kid I was fascinated. I believed in them more when I was younger, but I would get these books, and I still have a lot of them, about like, here's the part on, you know, Atlantis, or here's the part on psychic twins, or like when people can sense when somebody is feeling the same thing or has died or whatever, and like all these ideas and these what ifs. And as I got older, I think they influenced a lot of the stories that I like to write and to read, and I've reached the point where I've kind of I don't take a lot of stock in them. They're not any one of those individual topics aren't something I don't have a lot to say about them. They don't mean anything to me personally. To me it's more the memory and the experience of immersing myself in a lot of those concepts and a lot of those stories, and I don't really know what else to say except that I like them. I like reading about those things. As I've gotten older, I've gotten less interested just because I don't think there's really much to them. I think just being aware of those things, I think just being aware of certain myths and stories and whatever, even if you don't believe in them, is kind of fun, because it helps you realize there's all these possibilities out there, and you can sort of do your own research, and if you think it's, you know, it's true and you're not hurting anybody, then that's great. But if you don't, then maybe it's some good imagination fuel for whatever, for your, I don't know, your next D&D session, or for just the heck of it. I think the world is so full of stories, and I think the stories really are what entertain us and kind of give us something to read around the campfire on the television, or they can be something to educate or to entertain. And sometimes it has a plot, and sometimes it's just, you know, one time I saw this thing moving in the distance.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think without us formally introducing our closing segment, I think that you have made a good point about sort of bringing back that sense of wonder and curiosity that accompanies learning about the paranormal and the supernatural, and not necessarily believing all of it blindly, because a lot of it is, of course, fictional and fantastical, and is more for entertainment and excitement than it is for like factual analysis or research in that sense. But I think that there is a place for helping us to understand our world through story and metaphor and symbolism. There's a place for trying to come to terms with things about our world that we don't and maybe can't understand. And I do think that there is something to be appreciated, like you said, in asking sort of that what if, and acknowledging, in sometimes kind of a fun way, but acknowledging like, oh, there are a lot of things about this world that we still have yet to learn and understand, and maybe having a little bit of humility when it comes to, it sounds a little silly, but like having a little bit of humility to be like, probably no such thing as ghosts, probably no such thing as at least most of the encounters with, you know, UFOs and aliens and Bigfoot and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, there's always that sliver of like, well, maybe I don't know everything about the universe and parallel dimensions and the concept of time and like all of these things, to where it's like, yeah, I guess technically anything is possible.
Yeah, you know, as I think, to paraphrase Shakespeare, there are stranger things in heaven and in earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. And truth is stranger than fiction.
Yes.
So, yeah. Well, hope we haven't scared all of you out there too much with our discussion of all of these strange, unknowable, and incomprehensible mysteries of the universe. But that's in part, you know, I guess to also link it back to the holiday that we're celebrating. Part of what makes Halloween so fun is that you have all of these things that you're trying to make sense of and understand, these stories and encounters and stuff that can be a little bit scary or spooky at times. And don't forget that at the end of the day, it's okay to just have fun with it, and to not take it too seriously, but to just have it be something that can be a moment of joy in your day, even if there's a little bit of shivers up and down your spine
Yes.
as you experience it. All right, well, thank you all for joining us for this very special in-person episode. It's very nice to finally be able to not be behind two different screens and doing this. So I
Long
appreciate
overdue,
you
yep.
coming up to join me, Trevor. And yeah, we've been your co-hosts, and hope that you have a very happy Halloween.
Stay spooky.
Bye.